Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. The world's most famous arena. How about we go to New York City, Big East tournament, Madison Square Garden. I say this all the time. I think most people listening to this podcast know by now. I grew up in Connecticut, went to the Big East tournament basically every year from about 2005 or so until probably, I moved out to California in 2012. And I think there was even one year I went back for the Big East tournament. So I was there for the Jerry McNamara run. I was in the building the day that Jim Boeheim said we wouldn't have won 10 effing games without Jerry McNamara. By the way, some of you know this. Maybe many of you probably don't. I was at the 6 overtime UConn-Syracuse game. I was there with the young lady, as I always say. I think that the game lasted longer than the relationship did. But so love this tournament. Miss being on the East Coast for it. But let's go ahead and dive into the odds, okay? So the odds, probably not surprising. St. John's is the overwhelming favorite in this tournament at plus 150. They are, of course, the number 1 overall seed after winning the regular season. Creighton is the 2 seed at plus 375. UConn and Dan Hurley, fresh off Dan Hurley's appearance on 60 Minutes, is plus 400. Marquette is plus 600. Xavier plus 900. Again, worth noting, we have odds on every single team at the BetUS Sportsbook. We're just giving you the top 4 or 5 kind of for brevity's sake here, okay? So, Madison Square Garden, Big East tournament. St. John's is the favorite. What is the big story? In my opinion, it is the Johnnies. Listen, we get hyperbolic and caught up in the moment. This feels like one of the coolest stories we've seen in a long time and one of the most unexpected, right? Because you have programs that can kind of elevate themselves after a down year or a down couple years or whatever, but they're kind of programs that like they've done it recently, right? Like, Louisville had a couple bad years, but Louisville also under Pitino was in a Final Four within the last decade. I guess it would be a little bit more than a decade, but you get the point. UConn had a couple down years, but there was never like a 30-year gap. St. John's, we're talking about a 30-year gap since the last time they have been anything close to this. I think it's the coolest story we've seen. I probably won't have time to do a National Coach of the Year, All-American Team show. Rick Pitino is my National Coach of the Year. Listen, it's no disrespect to any other, media outlet. I just don't know how you can take a team. St. John's, and I know they still haven't technically done this, but St. John's hasn't even won an NCAA tournament game since 2000, okay? So we're talking about a team that's gone a quarter century without winning an NCAA tournament game. And what were the stats? 93 was the last time they split a Big East championship, 85, so 40 years since they won this conference outright. It's as cool of a story as we've seen. It's the biggest story going into the Garden. The Garden has been rocking, and it will be this week. And I can't wait to see the not diversity, but UConn and St. John's are going to have by far the 2 biggest fan bases there, and I think that's awesome. In terms of the bubble picture, really it comes down to one team, and we've talked about them a lot on this show over the last couple weeks as we've done all of our bubble stuff. It is the Xavier Musketeers. Listen, I like Sean Miller. I really like Sean Miller, actually. We've had him on this show. I think he's a great dude. I think he's a great coach. I think they're probably right now in, but there's a couple variables with them. Is one, first of all, they only have one quad 1 win. Why that's important is I think if you lose your opener, even if you win your opener, but if you lose your opener, you might still be in, but you are sitting on pins and needles because you're hoping that there's not a surprise winner of the Mountain West or a surprise winner in the ACC or a surprise winner in the Big Ten or wherever, because I feel like that's the kind of team that would get picked off in a conversation about bubble, about this, about that, about resume. And I think they're the kind of team that would lose a spot to a bid stealer. One quad 1 win, I don't know that it's going to get the job done. And so where the bubble picture becomes interesting, Xavier opens on Thursday afternoon. They are in the 4-5 game with Marquette. I think that Marquette game is kind of important. You beat Marquette, you get a second quad 1 win. You'd probably have to beat St. John's to feel really, really, really good. I think if you beat Marquette, though, you're probably in reasonable position to have an NCAA tournament resume. At that point, you'd have 8 wins in a row. Even if you lost to St. John's, 8 in your last 9 games. I know that the committee, by the way, because somebody will get in the comment section, I know the committee no longer looks at the last 10 games. That was a metric that the committee used to use. They don't do that anymore. It does not change the fact that I think Xavier beat Marquette. You feel good. You beat St. John's. I don't see how you were left out. So Xavier's on the bubble. Villanova fringes of the bubble. Villanova would really have to make a run. I think for Villanova to even be in the tournament picture, probably need to get to I think if you get to the finals, maybe that's enough to get in. Villanova opens with the 6-11 game against Seton Hall. They would then play UConn. They would then likely play Creighton. You win all three, you're good. I think even a win over Seton Hall and a win over UConn probably is not enough. Obviously, if you get to the final and you win it, that's a different conversation. In terms of long shots, okay, so the bubble is Xavier, maybe Villanova. In terms of long shots, one, it's hard to pick anybody other than those top three, top four. There's just such a separation between the top and the bottom. Most leagues, right? Like, most leagues like a big, an SEC, a Big Ten, there's not a huge gap between the top and the middle. I feel like the Big East, there's a very clear top. There's a very clear middle, and then the bottom is just really not very good. You get past Marquette, you get past Xavier in that 4-5 game. Villanova's not playing well. Georgetown, I think, was playing well for a while, but they're dealing with injuries. DePaul, to their credit, has won 2 straight coming into this one. I don't know. But I would say most of the teams playing Wednesday, they're much more concerned with the portal and next season than they are with actually making. Listen, they all want to make a run at the Big East tournament. I just don't know how many are realistically capable of doing it. I guess you could argue if you're looking for a dark horse, one, can you call UConn a dark horse? Probably not. I know they're third in the odds, but listen, they're going to have home court advantage. The team that I would say in theory could be a dark horse, I guess, would be Nova. Nova has Seton Hall in the opener. If they play in the second round, they play a UConn team that they already beat once. They were up by 14 points in the second game before melting away. So I guess in theory, Villanova could make a run. I just don't really see it, not from that team, not with the way they are playing. In terms of a pick, in terms of a prediction, in terms of a winner, listen, I'm trying to, I don't want to undersell or oversell the Big East. It's hard for me to see any scenario where St. John's does not win this thing. St. John's, we've talked about it. They are a team that against those other elite teams, listen, I mean, just go back and look. I mean, what are they? They're 18-2 this year. So against the other teams, the 4 teams that are in tournament contention, UConn, they swept. Creighton, they lost by 1 at Creighton in January, maybe even December. And then after that, they went ahead and destroyed Creighton at the Garden. They swept Marquette, including on Saturday at the buzzer. They swept Xavier. And so, I mean, you're talking about of the top 4 other teams, they went 7-1. The one loss was by 1 point, basically at the buzzer. It's hard for me to see a scenario where they don't roll through this tournament. And then the other thing is the Garden's going to be rocking. And listen, I'm not a big, this isn't really a conspiracy theory, but I don't believe in fate. I don't believe in destiny. I don't believe in any of that. But after watching St. John's over the last probably 6 to 8, I just don't see how they don't win this tournament. I mean, every single game, they're down. Every single game, there's some adversity. They were down at UConn. They were down on Saturday at Marquette. They were down double figures against Xavier at halftime at the Garden and still came back and won. And so they're just a team that is resilient. They believe. Rick Pitino has them believing in what they are doing and what they are capable of and how they are winning. Hard for me to see them not winning this tournament. If I had to pick a team from the bottom half of the bracket, I know that historically Creighton has given UConn trouble. But remember, UConn won at Creighton about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I think the other thing with UConn, I do think UConn's playing some version of its best basketball. 4 straight wins. They destroyed Seton Hall on senior night. And, Dan Hurley did say it. We are a program that's built for March. I just don't know. I just don't know that this is the right spot or the right opportunity for anybody other than St. John. So I will pick UConn to play in the final. I think, by the way, that's what Fox wants. That's what consumers want. I will go ahead and take St. John's to win, though. It's been a magical season. I think St. John's wins the Big East tournament. By the way, this is maybe the most important story, actually. St. John's. I think they have to win this Big East tournament. They don't have much of an out-of-conference resume to speak of. I think they need to win the Big East tournament to get a 2 seed. If they don't, they're probably on the 3 line. If they are a 2 seed, though, imagine being the 2 seed, Duke in the East. You know what, CBS and Turner and everybody are going to set it up this way. East Regional, number 1 Duke, number 2 St. John's. I think St. John's gets there if they were to win this one. But again, we'll see what happens as time goes on.